I took a test once, years ago, like 10, 12 years ago. It was an internet online test. It wasn't even a test, it was an experiment. And what these programmers had done is created this software, and what they wanted you to do was take some prose that you had written and copy and paste it and put it into their program as much as possible. And it would analyze it, and it would tell you whether you were a male writer or a female writer. And that really intrigued me because first of all, I wasn't sure I agreed with the premise, but I thought I'd give it a shot. So I copied 2 or 3 random newspaper columns, plugged it in there, clicked on analyze. Then I got up and I went and found my wife, and I said, honey, this computer thing says I write like a girl. Which makes sense. It does, because I realized that most of my favorite authors are women. I don't know why, but they are. And maybe it's the kind of thing I read. But there are a couple that I just adore, a couple of women writers, and I read everything they write. I read their books, and I reread them, and I read their articles and their columns and their poems and their essays and their interviews. Anything they do on social media, I read. They're about my age. They have this sort of the same backstory, so I relate to them a little bit more. And I noticed that recently they were getting a little more aggressive and being a little, the absolute in certain things they were saying. These weren't bad things. It had nothing to do with politics or religion or anything controversial. They were just kind of life lessons, but they were kind of saying, this is how this is done. This is why this happens. This is what you do when this occurs. And I was just sort of taken aback because I noticed it came on kind of suddenly, and it was unlike them. And all of a sudden it occurred to me that maybe they had reached this point where they were at 60 or approaching 60, and they looked back and they thought, well, half of my life is already over. Maybe now's the time, the appropriate time, to share some wisdom, which is really what it was. I mean, it was clever, and it was witty, and it was kind, and it was wisdom. And that really surprised me, because, as I said, they're about my age, and I didn't know that we were allowed to do that. So there's no wisdom in here. It's just stories. If I'd known that I was supposed to put wisdom in there, I would have put wisdom in there. But no one told me. But if you read it and you find wisdom, then certainly let me know where it is, because I'd like to know.